Welcome to Switch Comics. My name is Marco, and today I'm going to be talking about 10 pre-code horror comics that I would love to add to my collection. Now, before we get into that, you may have noticed there's something new here. This I'm calling the treasure case. And there's something really cool that I just recently picked up inside here. So, I'm going to be showing that off a bit later in the video, but we're going to talk about pre-code horror first of all. So, some of you all may not know about pre-code horror comics and what that entails and what that means at all. So, I'm going to give a brief little summary to catch you up to speed before I show you the comics I would love to add. So, pre-code horror started... basically, pre-code just means it was before the Comics Code Authority. Horror comics really picked up in popularity after World War II, and then it was picking up a lot of steam, a lot of interest, and they really started pushing the envelope with it and trying to see, not really to see what they could get away with, but they just, a lot of the writers and artists had full liberty to just do whatever they wanted, and they were just being... especially at that time, which I guess I should also say, some of the covers that I'm going to be showing still, even to this day, are a little disturbing, and that's part of the charm about them. Again, it's spooky, it's gory, it's weird, there's a lot of cool stuff in the pre-code horror, but some of the stuff is a little disturbing and may, to certain people, not be something you want to look at. So, if that's not your thing, then maybe you want to turn away for now. But if you're into the weird, scary, and spooky, and what better month to do this in, I figured. So, but basically, yeah, it culminated in the Comics Code Authority getting created, which basically they came out and they were like, yeah, you can't do any of this stuff anymore. So, a lot of those companies ended up going bankrupt and not being able to make comics and stuff like that. And obviously a lot of the artists and writers that wanted to tell certain stories and were making, from what I understand, good money at the time, they weren't able to do that anymore. So but yeah, so this is all, it's a forgotten time, I guess. Not forgotten, not to say like nobody knows about this. Obviously it's, I'd say, a more niche collectible market now, and I feel like these books are, they're just definitely very hard to find these days. And, like I said, I'm pretty positive, could be wrong. I think the Comics Code Authority started in 1954. So obviously all of these books are pretty dang old. But, again, if you would like to know more about the pre-code comics and Comic Code Authority and all that, there's other videos you can go do some research and stuff like that. It's a pretty interesting topic, but I don't want to bog you down with too much information. Let's go ahead and get into it. So the first comic on my list, and by the way, this is not a list of like least to most or most to least once or anything. This is I picked up my top 10, and then I have them organized by price because that's just how I organize things. And also, we're going to be going off, usually in a lot of these videos, I'll go ahead and tell you, if you're interested in buying this comic, it's probably going to cost you about this much. I just left up all the prices from Key Collector, which is not a great source of pricing. I never recommend Key Collector for pricing. It's good just for knowledge more than anything. However, a lot of these books are super hard to find, and there's just I just figured it'd be a lot easier just to throw up the Key Collector prices, and these shouldn't be prices that skew up and down. It's not like Marvel Comics or DC Comics where somebody's announced and they're going to spike or drop because their movie's out or this, that, or whatever. It's like these comics have their value and should, for the most part, sustain their value and, only really grow, I would think. But let's go ahead and get into it, starting with Shock Suspense Stories number 5. I hope I say that right. That's how I say it. I don't know if you're supposed to say it a different way. But this one, so as I said, there's some kind of disturbing covers on here, which this one features a man being hung. And again, there's just something about, I don't know, I'm a big horror fan of myself, and I like weird and dark, and there's also a historical fact for me of these comics that were outlawed just because, at the time, and again, a little bit of Comic Code Authority stuff was they said these comics were causing juvenile delinquents and devil worship and all that kind of stuff. You've seen it again. It happened in the '90s with music, and it happened in all kinds of that happened not too long ago with music, I guess, as well. Lil Nas X, I know people freaking out. People always say the devil's causing this, that, or whatever, or causing children to do this or whatever, and so comics was another victim of that, but they got hit pretty hard, and like I said, completely vanquished, and not able to do a lot of things that writers want to do. They had to get it filtered through, and if the authority said no, then you couldn't publish it. So at least for a time being, But anyway, so this is the first one. As you can see, the prices on here goes from $110 to $1,000, or I guess $1,100. We'll say. I was going to say 1,000.1. That's that's a weird way to say that. But yeah. So again, these comics can be quite pricey, and it's part of the reason why I haven't got into them. We're going to go ahead and move on though to the second book here, which is going to be Vault of Horror 37. Coincidentally, is another man being hung. Like I said, it's just in price order, not in categories. I think this is the only other man being hung. I really, really love the angle on this one. I think the first one is pretty... It has that just generic shock value, pretty normal layout, nothing super fancy about it, but the artistry in this one, I think, is really, really fantastic. Just all the angles of the walls and the man with the rope and everything, and how the rope goes around him as well. I think it's a lot of really, really cool angles and everything going on. I really also even just like the decision to make the title bright yellow. Really helps pop from all the dark colors, and then you have the little circles on the side with the additional stories, or the featuring, I guess, there. And I think it just comes together as a really strong, awesome looking cover. Again, despite its what it's about. Then moving on to Crime Suspense Stories number 19. So this one here shows a woman being choked underwater, which again is pretty violent. There's a little bit of notation here. So this one was used in the court case for the Comics Code Authority, or creating it, and then so it's saying that a man poisoned his wife and then poured out the poison in the sink. So I'm sure, and I don't know all the details. Like I said, I've looked into some of the stuff, and it is really interesting part of history. But I'm sure they were like, they're teaching how to get away with murder or something, just silly stuff. Looking at the price here, we got $160 to $1,600. So, definitely, I mean, you're going to see these books really climb up in a lot of value. A lot of people really only think about, the big superhero books and stuff like that, and there might be, maybe a Disney, like a Mickey Mouse book or something, some little obscure ones, or some modern, something's killing the children, something like that. But these classic pre-code horror books can fetch a pretty penny, and like I said, are also just extremely hard to find. Next one on the list I got here is Crime Suspense Stories number 23, which, by the way, I think most of the ones on my list here are from EC Comics, just throwing that out there. I think there's maybe only one or two that's not. And there's a lot of cool ones to go through. I mean, again, not sponsored by Key Collector or anything, but go through Key Collector. They have a section for pre-code horror, and there's more than that too. But it just has a bunch of really cool iconic covers you can look through. And if you're into that type of thing, there's a lot of cool stuff to maybe be interested in. And one day I want to get into this. It's just there's enough superhero books, well, mainly Marvel books and Star Wars books, I guess, that have my attention for now, but one day I definitely want to get into pre-code horror. I've talked about it a little bit here and there on the channel. I don't know if really too many people are interested. I think this is a pretty niche thing, and again, I think the price kind of separates it for a lot of people. It's like, I might be interested, but not at that price. For me, I mean, even when collecting like the superhero books, a lot of it is kind of this idea of like a history preservation, having these stories to be able to tell. And to me, that's why I personally grew fond of these big key books. Is they're like historical value. Obviously, they have a big monetary value, um, but to me, it's not necessarily the bigger number. You know, the more expensive book is the more interesting book. A lot of it, you know, is just like how cool, you know, how cool is first Thor? I mean, like obviously, you know, it's the my most expensive book in my collection, but it's first Thor. You know what I mean? Or even to take it to other books that I have that aren't as expensive that I'm really excited about. I have a first. Oh God, Jim Lee art in that Samurai Santa book. I love that book. I would love to find that book in a high grade because it's really hard to find, and it's not really that crazy valuable of a book, even considering how hard it is to find. Um, but it's just super cool to me, and it's that historical knowledge that really gives it importance to me. So anyway, so we have another, well, actually another woman about to be drowned. She's above water this time. This is a prelude to the last comics again, or last comic. The pricing here we have 255 up to 2.2 thousand, 2200. I don't know. I keep the 2.2 is throwing me off. But anyway, just again, I think real nice lighting. I like the way it definitely looks like it's late at night. Which I know it looks like something being shot late at night, if that makes sense, because it has the hard lighting on his back. It has like the fake moonlighting on his back. You know, everything's still well lit, but it still looks dark, and you can still see everything real nice. The colors are nice and cool, other than, you know, like her dress and everything. And I don't know, it's just got a cool composition to it. I like the way the boat is. I really like it. Moving on to the next one here, which is Mysterious Adventures number 19. This one's pretty cool. It has a bunch of text. I'm going to summarize it. Basically, it you know, setting up the story. It says these the skeletons are saying that you killed us during a while you're drunk driving. I think it says like a year ago or something. I don't know, maybe making that part up. You killed us while you were drunk driving. Now we're gonna kill you. Is the basic gist of it. And I think it's just a while some of these books are like real disturbing and horrifying, then you have one like this, which is kind of comical in a way. It's kind of goofy, you know. It's a little campy, and I don't know. I really like it. I think it's just funny, but I don't know, funny in that, like I said, I guess camp way. Like I enjoy the horror aspects of it. But I also sometimes horror and comedy go neck and neck. You know what I mean? And I think this is a good little mixture of it was so spooky we're funny. You know, if that makes sense to you. I don't know. I might be explaining that poorly, but I think this is a pretty just interesting cover. Not necessarily artistically, which I mean all of the books I think, you know, are drawn well and everything, but sometimes, like I said, some of them I think are, you know, cut above the rest, and there's some other really cool ones. I know there's some other really that I would say are much more artistically interesting. Other than this one, to me, this one is the idea that really enthralls me in this comic. It's just this whole little setup, and you kind of get the full story just on this one cover. I think this is going to be a good point to stop and show you my new treasure box. I just picked this thing up. I'm going to do a little bit of tweaking and modifying on it. But, so yeah, here's my little treasure box. And this might be suspiciously shaped. You might already have an idea. It is a comic. But what comic is it? I picked up Doctor Strange 169. So this, I'll teach another little history lesson here, in case you all don't know, is the first time. This used to be Strange Tales, but this is when it switches over fully to being called Doctor Strange. So it's the first book that is with the title Doctor Strange, even though it's issue 169. It will be replacing my Doctor Strange number 1. This I bought from a viewer, I think, a long time ago. I got it graded not too terribly long ago, and it's, funnily enough, I thought this book was kind of more out of price reach. You know, I don't know if anybody's ever had that. I've had that recently with two different comics where I realized, oh, that's actually kind of affordable. I assumed that book would be like stupid expensive. But this one, also shout out to Elite Comics on Instagram. I bought this from them. First time I ever did a purchase through them. I've been watching their page for a long time. Honestly, been wanting to buy something from them for a long time, but their books sell really fast. So I'd see something and be too late. I already see, it was already sold. I was like, dang. So I was able to hop on this one. I was kind of already looking at this book. Like I said, I recently found out it's not that expensive. Not as expensive as I thought. Obviously, in higher grades, it can be very expensive. But I mean, I got it at a 5.0. I'm pretty happy with that. It's a great looking cover. Again, not so. I mean, it's kind of spooky. I'd say it's kind of gives off horror like vibes. I'm trying to not get the glare on there, but I like some of the horror and mystic elements can kind of be wrapped into one. Sometimes, I feel like Marvel's doing that right now, or at least delving into that. We've had Multiverse of Madness that was spooky and mystic, and then Moon Knight, and now we have Werewolf by Night. It's a good time to be a horror and a Marvel fan. That's all I'm saying. But anyway, very, very cool book. We'll be adding that to the wall, swapping it out. We'll throw you back in the treasure chest now. Treasure case? What did I call this thing? I forgot already. Let's go ahead and finish off the list, though. So, moving on to Crime Suspense Stories, number 20. I didn't even realize. Like I said, I just kind of picked out my ones I wanted to talk about, and I didn't really think about them as a collective whole. This is The Third Hanging, and this is a pretty famous one. So as you can see, the price is really starting to spike here. So we're going from $725 to $7,300, and this is one that I think I've known about for a long time. Like I said, there's a lot you can go through and look and find a bunch. Like I said, you can find a bunch on Key Collector, and even out of Key Collector, there's a ton of these pre-code horror comics, and I think this is definitely one of the more iconic images. And it's just brutal. It is definitely pretty brutal, as you can see here at the bottom, also referenced in that Seduction of the Innocent. So this is one of the ones that made the news, so to speak. And again, that big yellow title, I think that really helps to contrast against all these dark. There's a bit of warm colors in this one, but just these dark, dreary colors and vibe and everything's going on, and then crime suspense stories. It's a pretty freaking sweet cover. I really like this one. I think it is it's a vibe. That's all I gotta say about it, I guess. Moving on to the next one, we have, I think, the first non-EC comic on the list. We have Fight Against Crime number 20, and this one shows a man with a head in one hand and the body in the other as he's dumping it into a sewer. And again, just a cool, just a big story that you can just see from one image. And I think that's really neat. Like you get this full like kind of package. You really know what you're walking into in this comic. And again, I think the composition is pretty decent. I don't think it's the greatest cover ever, but I think the story elements more so carry this image rather than necessarily shot composition. But I mean, overall, and again, they're always in a red dress, aren't they? Always a doomed lady in a red dress, I guess. And then this one, I don't know if I said the price, from $900, we're reaching $1,000 here just for the low. That's where the earlier books topped off was about $1,000, and now that's about the low, and then the top of $8,500 here for this book. So moving on to Crime Suspense Stories number 22, we have yet again another Beheaded Woman. I think compositionally this is a much cooler book. I like the other one, and this one doesn't tell as much of a story, but I think as a cover is just super wicked. You got the bloody axe, you got this awesome beheaded woman, which is a weird statement to say. Do not take that out of context. But it is, the art on this book is phenomenal. You can see the body miles away. It's not, I mean, it's just all the way over there. It's detached. It is not connected. I love this horror look on her face. I really, really enjoy this one. It's got a little bit of financial news on it. So a 3.5 sold for $5,000 recently, and then compared to a 3,600 sale in December, I guess that means of last year. So a 39% increase on that one. And then also another book used in shown to the Senate committee. It says. I really, really like this one though. This one is super, super cool, and you'll kind of notice that with as we're getting into the more expensive books, we are getting into a lot of the more iconic books, because obviously the whole thing about this is the appeal, the draw, a lot of times to the cover, and with any comic, the more iconic usually means the more expensive, but especially when you're dealing with books from the 50s and earlier. So moving on, we have Black Cat Mystery number 50, and another EC book, where this man's face is just dissolving, and it is awesome. It is so cool. His tooth's falling out, his fingers and everything. It just got eviscerated. Absolutely brilliant cover. I think it is super, super solid. One of my favorites, I'd say. And I think there's only one more after this, and I really struggle. This one's really solid. The one I'm about to show you is really solid. Which, by the way, also we're in crazy numbers here, from 2,000 at a low to 23,000 of a high. That is a pretty big jump. I don't think I showed. I showed the prices, but the last one was 1.3 to 18,000. So that was the big jump right there, actually. But I mean, and now we're at 23,000, which is also pretty freaking crazy. But yeah, I mean, just an awesome cover. Just gory and disturbing, and he's alive. His eyes are looking down at it. Everything is he's feeling all of it. And that is not something that you'd want to go to. It's definitely a spooky, great horror comic cover. And then the last one I have here is Chamber of Chills number 19, and this book goes from $3,200 to $32,000. And this one, again, super, super iconic. Not super like the other one was super gory and terrifying. This one, I think, is just really cool. It's a little cliche in ways too, but just to have the wine glass being held by a skeleton, and then she's smoking a cigarette in the background, and you can see her, but then through the glass is a skull. So kind of a cheesy concept by today's standards, but I think the execution on this cover is phenomenal. I really like the differential drawing style, or at least shading style and everything, between the woman that is so flatly colored, and it's just really kind of just three colors, just yellow skin tone and red, always in red, but then like this super detailed black and white, in the glass with the skull and everything. And I think it's super cool contrast. I really enjoy it. If I could change one thing, I don't think the skeleton hand needs to be green. Yeah, I think it'd be kind of cool if it was also in black and white, or maybe just bone color. I think the green throws it off a little bit. I don't think it's necessarily... I think it's kind of a weird color in the mix here. But that is a small nitpick. I still think it is super, super awesome. Again, if I had to pick between my absolute favorite, it would definitely be between this one, the man with his face dissolving, and the second one I showed you of the man hanging with the crazy cool angle with the walls all, I don't know, it's a super, super cool angle. And that was one of the cheaper books, which will probably end up being one of the books I try to go for eventually. To start off with, might be that one, just because it is a cheaper one, considering considering how crazy these books can be. it's a semi-affordable one. Whereas like this one, for example, even at the low end is over $3,000, and that's would be a hefty uh, hefty way to get into it. There are some that are even more expensive than this. There's a few like KKK covers and stuff like that. I think I can't remember the name of the book and what number it is and everything, but I think one of those is the most expensive pre-code horror comic. And but yeah, it was just some really cool stuff. But these are my 10. Again, top 10, not necessarily in order. Although some of the ones at the end are definitely some of my favorites. But also one at the very, the second from the beginning was one of my favorites as well. So goes to show you there's some cool ones, even on the cheaper end. But that is what I have to show you all for today. I would love to know if you all are into pre-code horror, whether that means you have some, or you just think they're neat and you're kind of in my boat where you would like to buy some, but they are expensive and you haven't done that yet. Like I said, I've been talking about it for a while. I am pretty new to comics. I've only been to it a few years now, so I still think I got plenty of time to get into that. I'm not super worried about it yet. Like I said, definitely want to at some point. And I don't know. I'm curious. I think, especially like I said, with what Marvel's doing right now, we're on this cusp of delving into new things, and they're kind of going hard into horror a little bit, horror and mystic stuff and stuff like that. So there might be, and I don't know. I think horror is just a genre that has like this never-ending, die-hard fan base. We always, again, working at the comic shop, we always have people coming in looking for horror stuff, whether it's Funko Pops, action figures, statues, or whatever, Like, there's these people that just breathe horror, and I wouldn't say I'm quite like that. I'm a big horror fan. I love a lot of horror movies. I really like big, heavy suspense or tension type horror is my particular cup of tea. But I like a lot of, I like slashers and stuff like that too. Monster movies and whatever. But I don't know. I think Marvel's really kind of onto something. I'm curious if more companies, whether they be superhero or otherwise, really start pumping out more horror. Because I think it's being perceived pretty well. Especially speaking of the most recent Werewolf by Night. I don't know if I've heard like anything negative about it. It's been pretty awesome reviews. I really enjoyed it, which again, obviously I'm a Marvel head and I'm a horror head, so like I'm going to love it. But and it had two of my favorite characters, Man Thing and Elsa Bloodstone in it, so I was destined to love Werewolf by Night. But yeah, I don't know, just kind of some extra thoughts here at the end of the video. Anything that you want to talk about in that realm, in the comments, I would love to talk to you about. And yeah, that's going to be it for today. I will be, like I said, replacing that Doctor Strange with this Doctor Strange. And keep an eye out for my treasure chest, or whatever I called this earlier in the video. Treasure case? I don't know. Chest of treasures. Whenever you see this here on the couch, it means I got something cool in. And you might be seeing this next week. So thank you all so much for watching, and I hope to see you all next time.